Boom! Living End updates from Mexico City. Just played a 4 round modern event at GameSmart. Really cool store here in Mexico City. Welcome in. Much love. Trav here, and I know a lot of you want to hear about updates for Living End with all the new cycling cards. And I also want to share my energy and journey here as, again, I hung around after the Grand Prix. Great decision. Did a lot of work, but did some tourism, sightseeing, did some adventures. So happy that I did it. Came back to Mexico City for the pre-release. The night before the pre-release, played some modern. So this is before the new cards. And let's just start off by talking about. We'll talk about this list, and then we're gonna talk about how to beat Blue Control with Living End and in general. And then we're gonna talk about the uh, updates. So I'm playing a lot of cyclers. I really, really, really like architects and just playing more cyclers in general. What makes the deck good is cycling a lot. So architects doesn't have the best stats, but after you Living End, you get to look at the top 3 cards, make sure they don't top deck something to beat you, or if you need to top deck something, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Really good ability. And this one is cuttable though because the mana is tough. When I'm looking at the new cards, I'm looking at the mana. I'm not going to cut Carabit or Deadshot because they're so easy to cycle because of the hybrid cost. I'm willing to play less power for more mana consistency is one of the things about this deck. It's so consistent. Street Wraith, obviously. Really like the land cyclers. These ones are potentially be cuttable, but again, you always want to hit your 3rd land. You want to hit your 4th. You want to hit your 5th. If you're playing Blood Moon, somewhere in the 75, you want basics. So I always play 6 of these. We'll talk about cutting some. I'm playing the Outburst, the Dread, the Living End. No surprises there. And I decided to main some Blood Moons and Fulminators. At GP San Antonio, I made Captured Sunlight and Leyline. And I think that I was overboarding for Death Shadow and decks like that. And I did 2-0 them, but I really missed out on Fulminator Mage. The deck gets a lot of free wins from land destruction. Like last night versus Tron, I Fulminated the poor guy 10 times in 2 games. And that's just what the deck does. Sometimes the opponent misses a land drop and suddenly they have no lands in play. Don't turn down the free wins. That said, Captured Sunlight and Leyline, important sideboard cards. Captured Sunlight in general is amazing. I was able to beat Burn because of this card, and I almost never beat Burn. But I also rarely sideboard for Burn. Now that I sideboard for Burn, I feel like I have a better chance for it. It's just 4 life, but when you're racing Burn, 4 life is a card or a card and a half. 2 draw steps. 2 draw steps, maybe 3 draw steps because they draw a land. 4 because they draw a creature in there. So this really changes the math. And it's also amazing versus aggressive discard decks where you just need more. Like against Death Shadow deck, they will Thoughtseize your Demonic Dread, and then you have none left and you have to top deck. Well, if you have 12, it's much less likely that they're going to be able to make you discard all of them, or you have great odds to top deck them. So I would never not play Captured Sunlight in the 75 after this. Great sideboard card. Shriekmaw, Ingot Chewer, just good cards. I like to know that I'm going to use my sideboard cards. These come in all the time. They come in all the time. I needed another card in the main. I decided to put the Chewer because it's an out to random ensnaring bridge bullshit, and it does things. It kind of sucks with the Architects. This is the worst card in the deck for sure, and could have been a Shriekmaw or Leyline. I didn't have more cards. Maybe another Blood Moon. Okay, we're talking about Blue Control. First things that I would change. Architects is cuttable. Maybe for the 6/4. It just does better stats. It can't get lightning bolted. It's easier to cycle as well because we've got more red than black. So would look at making that change. And then I would maybe cut these 4 just for the new Archfiend, the Demon, the 5/4. That card is crazy. 2 mana to cycle is really bad in my opinion. I like these because you get selection and get insurance to hit your lands. I used to like Jungle Weaver, but I like Recluse a lot more because 2 mana cycle is bad. But the Archfiend 5/4 flyer is really nice, and the ability where you cycle a Street Wraith and put -1 on their whole team, really good. So I'd be looking at cutting these maybe. Been talking to Jody Keith, who's another Living End player, and he's looking at cutting some of the land cyclers to play Archfiends and then going up to 21 lands. That's basically what I'm exploring. I'm not actually playing blue and white for the flyers because affects the mana up too bad. Uh, I think I encourage you to try that out to test it, but I think you're probably not going to stay there. I think you're going to come back to Jund for these reasons because, I mean, it's basically Jund and like splashing a little bit of a white. But once you're playing blue and white, then you're really 4 or 5 colors and your mana starts to suck and you start to take too much damage. Don't think it's worth it. So that's what I would change. Now let's talk about how to beat blue control, because last night I played Burn round 1, was able to win with the help of this. And if they draw too many creatures, you can beat them as well because you can make them sacrifice. If they have all spells, like Living End, you win turn 6. It's so slow. Turn 7, maybe. It's one of the slowest in modern decks. Really control deck. So if it's all spell burn, you can't do anything. But if they draw a bunch of creatures and you gain 4 life, you can race them. And then I beat the Tron. It's just so hard to lose when you're doing this. And game 1, I Ingachura's his Expedition map turn 1 after he mulliganed. Pretty lucky. And then round 3, I beat Grixis Control. Round 4, I beat Esper Delver that also had Death Shadow. So I know some people struggle against these decks, especially with Living End. You shouldn't. It shouldn't be hard. And the key to these matchups is using the alternate cost as much as possible. For instance, Living End is one of the best draws against blue, as long as you don't draw 3 of them, which actually happened in one of the games. And I lost and I would have won if I had drawn 2 or 1, but I mean, that's happens with the deck. It will happen every 100 games or 200 games or something like that. But if you draw it, you suspend it on turn 4. These decks are usually not fast enough to kill you by turn 7, especially if they're holding up counter mana to try to stop you from playing Outburst at instant speed and Demonic Dread. They're playing very defensively. You can suspend this on turn 4, and on turn 7, it's coming off and you have all the mana up in the world. As much as Living End coming off with 6 mana up, they need 3 mana leaks at that point, and they're fighting Fulminator Mage and other stuff on the board. It just really overloads their mana, and you can play an Outburst and Dread, and it's just, you want to look to suspend this. Another key versus blue control is not cycling Street Wraith if you can help it. This is a very serviceable body. Most of the blue control right now, not all of it, but a lot of it plays black, so they can't block it. It also has 4 toughness, so they can't bolt it. It also costs 5, so they can't push it. So it's really hard for them to remove and block. So if you have a curve where maybe you Fulminator turn 3, to keep their mana down, draw out a counterspell, suspend Living End turn 4, play Street Wraith turn 5. Are they going to spend their counter on that? How are they going to even deal with it? So, and then maybe you cast a Recluse and you've got a fire, something to block their Delver or their Vendilion Click. Deadshot Minotaur to kill their Vendilion Click or Delver. You just start casting stuff. So one of the ways to lose versus a blue control is to not suspend this, and also to cycle too much. You only want to cycle to hit your land drops. If you're hitting your land drops, stop cycling, start casting your stuff. Another way to beat blue control is waiting for them to crack a fetch land. Maybe they don't have enough mana. You can sneak out a Violent Outburst. That's especially good if you have Simian Spirit Guide, which is really good, but I'm not running it because I'm doing this. I think it's possible to still fit in a couple, but with Blood Moon and 4 colors, I just want these lands, and I don't need more mana. So you can sneak this off sometimes. They crack their fetch land. Maybe you play this or Simian out and you beat them. So the Grixis control, I lost the game where I drew 3 Living Ends. And then the other games, both of those games I suspended Living End and started casting creatures and was able to win. That's usually going to be fast enough. And then the third round, or the last round, was against Delver, which is a little bit trickier because it's a lot faster. And you can't depend on these as much. The first game, you went turn 1 Delver, turn 2 Flip. Turn 2 Delver, he was on the play, Flip. And then it counters, and I couldn't really do anything. So I think these are kind of too slow. And it was also firing off discard. So versus something like that, you want Shriekmaw to kill the Delver, and you want Captured Sunlight to work through their counters and discard. And because they're racing you in the air. So that Captured was really MVP for me in games 2 and 3. There was one point where he was tapped out, and I had the window to Captured Sunlight, but there was like a 30% chance I hit Demonic Dread and lose because I can't cast it. And I instead had to pass, and he played Tassiger, and had mana up, but it was the last card, and thankfully it wasn't the counterspell. It was Elspeth, and he cast Elspeth and started taking over the board, but with my living end, I was able to get back, I think, maybe one Street Wraith. I Architect and dug into Street Wraith, and he was at 6 and couldn't Swamp Walk through it. Elspeth can't kill it. Street Wraith stole the day. And then, I'm trying to remember game 3. He got stuck on lands for a while and just lost. It was kind of annoying because I drew 3 Shriek Maws and had nothing to kill, and if there were Fulminators, I would have won easily. But it turns out he did have Delver. He was just sandbagging it so he could hold up counter spells. I just stopped cycling as soon as I could and started playing monsters. And won that way. So that's pretty much how to beat the blue control. Is you take advantage of the fact that they need to keep up mana by doing things, just doing things. And they have to keep countering them and run out of resources. Eventually, you can sneak this in. And again, updates for the deck. I would try the 6/4 over this, and I would try Archfiends over this, and that's what I'm going to try. And that's it. But I don't have any Modern for quite a long time. Maybe until Vegas, I might do it there. This is the only deck I have, and it's not even mine. I have to mail it back to the guy who lent it to me. Thank you. And I'm happy to have it. And again, Mexico has been great, and I'm excited to... Sorry I don't have any videos from GameSmart now. I had this video, filmed it in there, but the audio was all fucked up. There's no audio, and I had to redo it. But it was a great store, and had a lot of fun. Some good players. Modern's a lot more competitive than the pre-release. It's with Modern, generally people know what they're doing because they play the deck more than once. And I'll see y'all on the East Coast in a few days. So, much love, and let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.